All right, so we're going to talk about the VDB library that's going to come pre-packaged with all the project files. So go ahead and download the project files if you don't already have them, and then you'll have access to all of these things. So I'll go over them really quickly right now. I'll kind of show you where to find them and then how to use. I'm put the Houdini file in there as well, so that you can actually open this up, tweak them, whatever it may be. So the top ones we actually made. I think this one, but something close to it. These are your classic clouds in the sky. The thing that makes them unique the most is that they're going to have those flat bottoms, those flat, really shadowy bottoms. That's going to make them look like clouds like that. Next up, we have some overall atmosphere of your. So these are going to be good for like your general scene, something that you can just kind of scale up to your entire scene and have it look pretty decent. The next up we have some ground cover. So a couple different layers of this. Anytime you see these like circle ones, basically the reason why those are really great to work with is because then you can scatter them around your scene. So these square ones, you kind of end up with these like very boxy ends and starts, and you kind of have to scale it up over your over scene. Whereas these, you can actually get more scale out of them because then you can essentially duplicate them all over your scene and not end up with these really bad square blocky overlaps. So you can see this is happening there. So we have a really wide one. So if you want like your camera over here and you want some fog in the foreground, but you don't want the background, it's going to be a lot easier to do that than with just a square that you're working with. We have essentially a couple different, so this is going to be more for close-ups, and then these are all going to be much larger scale, so they're a lot more detailed, a lot more resolution there. Next up, we have some general depth. So we have the classic box, so if you want like just fog over your scene, we got that vertical grad, and then of course we have a radial one that we can easily duplicate around the scene. Next up, we have some wispy mountains. So these, what make these unique is they're going to have those really detailed wisps. So as if they've been coming through trees and that kind of stuff, they're going to end up being really detailed. Next up, we have rolling mountains. What makes these unique is they're a lot softer and they're very angular. So then you can actually take something like this, and then, you know, even though like this doesn't necessarily look like this, what this is designed to do is you take one and then you can put it here, you can duplicate it back, you can duplicate it again, and then slowly over time as you lay out your scene, you're going to end up with something like this. So there's a couple different shapes to work with there. Next up we have our chimney, so we actually built this one together, and then of course our campfire one that we built together. So all of these static ones, they're all going to be in this file I'm going to show you right now. These two animated ones, those are going to be the files that we've actually worked on already. So to check these ones out, we'll go ahead and jump in there. And essentially what we got is Chapter 11 VDB library. So what you can do is you can kind of ignore a lot of this. This is just kind of like setup stuff. I got this like a human scale reference so you can kind of see in context a little bit. And of course we have our shader balls right here. These were just like a white, a gray, and a chrome. That was just for me to make sure I wasn't overexposing anything. And then of course we got some miscellaneous cameras and stuff that I was using to lay stuff out. But the main thing that you want to kind of jump in and play with is this library node. And if you jump inside of there, you'll see that we have a massive library. Essentially, each one of these, so you can see like depth haze version 1. If we look at our VDB library, you'll be able to see depth haze version 1 right there. So it's all pretty organized and it's very easy to kind of like navigate and get around. If you jump into the project files, you'll actually be able to find the VDB files by going to Houdini, go to under geometry, under library, and you'll see the massive library right here. I'm not going to ship the actual animations. I just have still frames of the campfire and the fire. But if you want the full sequence, go ahead and just recache out. You can just open the file and cache it out and you should be good to go. And then if you actually want to see them here, you can actually open this up and navigate through that like that, and you'll be able to find the stuff, and everything's labeled exactly the same as the actual file. Cool. So to break down the actual file, it's all cached out. So these are all pretty high res. So I do have them kind of set up at a pretty low voxel size. So just be mindful of that if you're working on a slower box. If you look at one of these, you may run out of memory really quick, just kind of like toggling through all this stuff. But we'll kind of go through this again. So we got that again, just general depth haze. If I see this in context, just go ahead and pin that right there so we can see this a little bit better. So this is just a smaller detailed one, one that has a vertical height, one that has some just noise applied to it. So this is just general atmosphere with some turbulence in there. And then of course we have something like this. So this one, just to kind of put it in context, so what I was talking about before, how to actually apply this, you can easily, like if you're in Maya or wherever it may be, you can easily like move this around. Whoops. And then rotate it around like this, and then merge that in. And this is going to be a lot easier in terms of, so you can see like right here how this transition is a lot more forgiving than what a square would be. So if I actually put this on the edge there, so it's a little slow moving around. So that transition's a lot easier than what a square would. Cool. So this is going to be ground cover. So this is really, really low to the ground. So you can see him, how he's kind of like popping up through the fog there. And again, we got that more radial one. Cool. So moving forward, another ground fog. This is where we start to get into the gradients. So like if you want like foreground, so you want something like this where you don't have a lot in the foreground, but you do in the background, it's going to be a lot easier to work with. So same kind of deal on this one. This is just going to be on a much larger scale. So if you want something in the foreground like that, it's going to be very, very easy to do. And of course, we have our radial one. There we go. Cool. So moving on, we have our mist. So this is going to be a really, really detailed, wispy. Cool. So here we have our rolling hills. Version 1, version 2, so you can see how we have that arc going there. Cool, so moving on, we have our actual clouds. So we made a setup, we basically made this setup before, so this should all be pretty familiar. I have a couple different versions of this. This is going to be, and you can see like here, you know, this is pretty small in scale, but you can scale this up pretty big and it can be pretty forgiving to be any kind of scale. Cool. Awesome. So generally speaking, whoops. Cool. So generally speaking, a lot of the setup that we've already done, it's basically just kind of copied and pasted. Very, very straightforward in terms of like what we talked about is all very, very relevant for what's going on inside here. It's the same setup over and over and over. Just kind of copied and pasted and tweaked a little bit to mimic what they needed to do. Cool. So I'll point you to where this is. It's going to be chapter 11, VDB library.